cloud.
Welcome to all of you to our WEED Art and Activism series. We welcome you to honor and spotlight the work of renowned Bay Area artist Kim Anno with the topic Poetics of the Witness. She will be joining us as part of WEED Art and Activism number 19 series today, September 29th, 2024. Kim will discuss her experience as an artist and how she learned to empower her voice while leaning into her activism. In 2009, Kim saw the photograph of the president of the Maldives, Mohammed Nasheed, signing documents underwater off the coast of the Maldives capital. In that instant, she realized the pace of climate change was tangible, inevitable, and impacting developing nations in profound ways, especially those of coastal areas with tourist industries. In that year, she began to evolve her painting, which had been a 20-year investigation of abstraction informed by architecture and textiles art, as well as cultural histories of Asia. Suddenly, she had the epiphany that she needed to intrinsically intertwine her artwork with her activism. So before we start, I'll tell you a little bit about our organization, Women Eco Artist Dialogue, WEED. WEED was founded in 1996 as a volunteer-run collective of female-identified visual artists, writers, curators, art historians, researchers, scientists, and others interested in the highlighting of the intersection of art and ecological issues. And I'm Mary White, one of the co-chairs, joined by Manoush Zumoradinia, who's the co-chair and also the host of this presentation. We'll start with a land acknowledgement. The WEED office in Berkeley sits on the territory of the Wichen, the ancestral and unceded land of the Chichonio-speaking Ohlone people, the successors of the sovereign Verona Band of Alameda County, near one of the largest shell mounds in the Bay Area. The land was and continues to be of great importance to the Muwekma Ohlone tribe and other familiar descendants of the Verona Band. We recognize the Muwekma Ohlone tribe who are campaigning to become federally recognized, the Association of Ramaytush Ohlone, who are researching, revitalizing, and preserving Ramaytush Ohlone history and culture, and the Confederated Villages of Lejean and the Segurate Land Trust, who are working to return native land back to indigenous stewardship, which just happened twice in Berkeley just a few months ago. Please add to the chat the land acknowledgement from your particular location. I have a little Zoom housekeeping and then an introduction to Kim. Please, we're recording this presentation, so please keep your audio muted during the presentations, and the host will mute you if you have extra noise. If you have questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat for Kim. We'll stop the first recording after the presentation and immediately start the second recording for questions and answers, and this will be an hour-and-a-half presentation. Now Kim's bio, and very impressive. Kim Anno is an internationally exhibiting and screening artist and filmmaker, as well as president of Wild Projects, a 501c3 social practice arts organization. She's also been on the City of Berkeley's Civic Arts Commission for 11 years, where the budget has quadrupled during her time in advocacy. She's now organizing the West Berkeley Arts District with Cameron Wu to get eventual state designation in order to achieve artists' affordable housing. Her work and activism have been central to her practice for many decades. Having grown up in LA, Kim rejected the corporate dominance of the entertainment industry in favor of the feminist studio workshop with teachers such as Suzanne Lacey and Sheila Lavant de Bretteville. Sorry if I corrected that wrong. Her first works were publicly engaged performances. This non-materialistic education would imprint on her despite a deep desire to make objects? How could she reconcile both? Photographer Chris Johnson would go on to introduce her to large format photography as she began to make puppet shows in water tanks. It was thrilling to print large and to reveal in the details of the photographs. Quickly, she took advantage of learning video to make the objects move. In 5 years, she began to direct staged films that took on the topics of coastal flooding, erosion, and sea level rise. This led her to make 90 Miles from Paradise in Miami and Key West in 2016. She began to make plans to travel to Cuba, where they shared a fishery with the southern United States. Cuba, which is spelled Q-U-B-A, is the first feature film, all the while influencing how she could make a painting with images. And we'll hear more about the launch of her film very soon. So with no further ado, we're very glad to introduce Kim.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's so beautiful to invite me today. And it's so great to see some of you guys from my past, man. You tracked me down. I can't believe it. Thank you for coming. I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you a few things. I'm going to start here and I'm going to share computer sound. Just a second.
Just a minute, I'll turn my audio off.
Okay. And I'm going to put it on. Okay. I'm going to start with my activist call. So on October 6th, we're having a mayoral candidate forum and also state district number 7. And so we're asking the arts sector to come down to the East Bay, even if you're in San Francisco or another location. We'd love to have you listen to what the mayoral candidates are going to be saying about what they can do for the arts, especially artist affordable housing. The performing arts organizations will be there because they're still reeling from COVID. And it's going to be a very interesting evening to hear a little bit about all our candidates and hold their feet to the fire. What can they do for the arts sector? So I just wanted to announce that, and it's free, and we'd love to see you. I'm just going to start out a little bit and say that I come from the language of visual art, and I make paintings, and I also do a lot of other things. Some people think that I'm just crazy because I do too many things, and other people who do a lot of things understand. So I just want to say I am kind of an obsessive creative. I'm going to start you with thinking about coming from this poetic language of painting. And these are paintings that are very large scale, and I'm working with history. So some people call them history paintings. The chair of the art department at Stanford, where I was the Holt resident in 2022, told me these are history paintings. And I'm like, okay, I can go with that term, whatever you think. So I'm working with historical images that are teeny tiny as my drawings, and I use them as drawings, and then I print them out on industrial flatbed printers. Some of these are on metal panels that I have manufactured, and then sometimes I work on linen. And in this case, I was a visiting artist in the lab at the UC Berkeley Butterfly Science Department, and I was using butterfly parts to create an architectural kind of experience. I would have to say, the viewer brings the meaning to this painting. It's not like it's declaring itself any kind of large meaning. But so you have to kind of look at these things over a group of pieces. I kind of have been using these historical books and steel engravings, which I also grew up printmaking, and I have a lot of respect and love, deep love for printmaking. So this one, for instance, is from a 1700s book. It was a small little page, and it really struck me in its meaning and its kind of questions about where did we start with our understanding of the natural history, and then where might we have made a wrong turn. So I asked myself these kinds of questions. Where did we begin to really think about how we could manipulate nature in a really difficult way? And I began to see that it was very parallel to the slavery movement and exploration and colonialism. These things are parallel in my mind. So here again, these are all oil paintings, and these happen to be on linen, and these are kind of medium size. And so I'm kind of looking at the way we perceive nature and how we can use that in a new way or a different way. In the one on the left, it's kind of like trying to see paradise, but it's obscured by movement. Oftentimes, I kind of shake the images back and forth in the scanner. I love working in this with a scanner. Scanners are really fun for me as a tool. This is a very large painting that in the collection of the San Francisco Arts Commission building. It's about, I guess, 9 feet wide and 6.5 feet or 7 feet tall. And I really am thinking about taxonomy and the past, and how do we see how we even studied nature so that we took a different turn that might have not been so positive in some way. So I kind of try to celebrate something, but also to dwell and think about what does it mean. And I just ask myself the questions. I don't have the answers. I'm just asking the questions and trying to understand the relationship between art, science, social history. My father was a physicist. He made the power source for the Voyager rocket ship that's still in space today. So I have a lot of curiosity about science and physics in general. This piece here is called Four Skies, and it's actually parts of butterflies, except for the clouds on the right. So in some way, you can see them as a kind of meditation on nature and our relationship to it. This was a kind of an installation shot of the show that I was putting up. This is a sculpture on the ground. It started out as a big, like a large scale tassel for a theatrical curtain, and it's attached to a theatrical curtain across the room. You'll see later. Um, but it also became like a buoy in the ocean. And I started to work with these ropes, and I'm really working a lot with ropes. So just to start you off at those kind of more abstract but poetic kind of gestures. And then in 2009, I saw this photograph, and here it is, and you probably all saw it too. Um, when I saw this photograph, it changed my whole practice. And I actually had to go to a life coach to understand where I was going to go, because I couldn't figure out what should I do? How do I impart meaning back into my work? Because I had a lot of very abstract, kind of luscious paintings that were collected by the design trade. And I started to feel kind of like weird about that. And I wanted to get more back into what was happening in the art itself. I was always an activist, always since age 15, but I kept it separate from my art. So I wanted some way to find it to be integrated. So here they are. And I don't know if you saw the documentary, The Island President, but you could Google that. It's fantastic.
Excuse me, Kim, is everybody else able to see your PowerPoint? Okay.
Yes.
Um, so I'm just going to play a little bit of this, and you'll see the relationship. This was Men and Women in Water Cities, Chapter 1. Just a little excerpt. Kind of low, the sound. perhaps you could see some relationships between the paintings and this. They're training to live underwater. It's kind of a training video. The other thing is, I was using Robert Longo's Men in Cities idea of office outfits, white collar people taking a break from their job. These guys on the left were two free divers who could stay underwater for 6 minutes, and they were making a. Okay, so I'm just going to move on. The next are two dancers. So I began to work with dancers. I actually am working with dancers even today. Dancers, dance and movement really captures the humanness, the human experience. And I so wanted that back into my work, but I didn't want to paint the figure or do anything like that. So I began to work with these dancers in kind of a similar vein. These guys had just come back from Fukushima. So poignant, just like right now in North Carolina, Tennessee. Same kind of aesthetic for the costume, the office outfit. So in this case, just really thinking about the qualities of trying to train to live underwater, and the difficulties of that. I myself studied Esther Williams movies. I tried to figure out how could I shoot underwater. anytime I have a problem, I try to problem solve and look at the masters who have done it before. Um, and then eventually I would go to Durban and I would bring my college where I teach to have a booth at CCA had a booth at Cope 17. And I came a little bit earlier and I started to work with these young people at the Bartell Arts Trust, where I taught them video, and they in turn uh, were actors in my film. And so the whole idea was that we were adapting to a watery world. And oftentimes the cast that I work with, they don't want to have a depressing image. They don't want to have a hard time. They don't want to think about the brutality of loss of land mass and infrastructure. They want to look positive and they want to see positive. And so in this case, we began to play a soccer match in the ocean, and we rearranged these flags as post-nation state flags. And this was after Hurricane Katrina, where the nation state failed the population. And so my question here is, what will any nation state do? Like, can any nation state help us, and or will they not be able to? There's so much international conflict. So here we are in the ocean playing the game. And these things exist as photographs and also as videos. I tried to do both. And then this is the Water City Berkeley project, which was my most ambitious one at that time. I had 100 teenagers a half a mile out in Alameda Beach on the sandbar, and we played a capture the flag game, a kind of post-nation state capture the flag game. And we had cheerleaders, and these referees were kind of like the referees of justice. They're creating a kind of pageantry, a kind of walk. In the same film, I got 4 environmental lawyers to come in their office outfits and surf on the same wave. Only actually, only 2 ended up being able to do that, but the whole goal was to try to get them all 4 to be on the wave. And then we also went to what is now Brooklyn Basin. It was this magical kind of place where Ken Kesey and his band used to practice and write poetry, and other people would come, and it's called the Tea House. And so in this location, I brought a band called the Kingdom of Naught, Dan Carbone and his singers, and they played, and that's part of the film as well. And then we have these dance kids from Berkeley High. Again, you see the referee as this arbiter of justice. In my family, I always grew up with sports. Both my siblings were elite sports people, playing on teams. My sister was the women's windsurfing champion of the world, blah, blah, blah. And my brother was an NFL football player. So the idea of sports and the kind of language of sports has always been embedded in our family. A little excerpt. Okay, so I'm using Oedipus Rex and democratize the text.
Help me.
And Carbone singing.
Help me. I was moving. I was moving. I was ripping through the universe past stars and planets. Supernova. A trillion suns. Screeching tires. Big Bang. Black hole. And now I'm still. My shiny black limousine is caught on the highway of eternity. And the traffic is backed up from here to heaven's heaven. I'm stuck in the back seat. And wouldn't you know the TV is busted? The driver forgot to stock the bar. There ain't a peanut butter and bacon sandwich inside. Ain't nothing. Ain't nothing to do but roll down that tinted window, stare down that long, long line of cars, and I say, oh, I say, yeah, I say, let me get past, let me get past, I want to get past, let me get past. Too many people backed up on the highway of eternity. Too many lonesome people like me gone nowhere. And my mind begins to drift away, back. And I remembers when I was a young man-child walking in the woods. And I come upon a big, beautiful robin's nest. And the branches was woven tighter than the wicker hamper in my mama's bathroom. That old stanky thing. But this was different. A bird wove this with her tender beak. And in that nest was 3 eggs the color of the sky. And I looked at them eggs just sitting there all in an instant, when suddenly I was consumed by an evil blackness. My good mind was taken over and I wanted to smash them sons of bitches. Hated them more than I hated the British rock stars. Ruined my career. Then I heard the voice of the mama robin inside of my head. Knock, knock, knocking on the inside of my brain. No, don't. Do not destroy my nest. Those are my children. I looked at them eggs the color of the sky, color of the sky, color of the pale blue sky. And I got to wondering if them birds see so much blue when they fly that they digest it. And that's why the eggs are that color. Well, some say I'm dumb, but I bet you Einstein never thought of that one. There's a whole lot of thoughts come to a man when he's stuck in the back seat of a limo on the highway of eternity.
Okay, let's see. All right. Okay, now I'm just gonna go a little bit faster. I've been thinking a lot about climate refugees and migration and the amount of people that are desperate to leave their place. This is the horrible incident of the Adriana, where the migrants, most of them died. You can see this. And when I look at this image, I think, God, who's taking the picture? You know, what can art do? What can people do? How do we reconcile our positionality, the person who's taking the picture? And the Greek Navy did not help very much here. So I just take a minute, think about these people. So I think every artist is looking for tools, myself included, in response to the capsizing of 700 migrants off the coast of Lesbos. I began to think about Sappho, and my former collaborator, Ann Carson, the poet, gave me the courage to inhabit anything in history and dismantle, rearrange the canons, use the tools of the masters to interrogate the house of the master. Much of my projects have used ancient text, Greek plays, Dante, Proust, and recently Sappho. And I want to introduce you to Sappho, which you, I'm sure, know already. These are some images of what we have of Sappho. And her work is fragments. And so what I did with Sappho was I took the text and I rearranged it and I added my own stanzas. I know that's kind of gutsy to do, or maybe it's not right, I don't know. But I entered into the Sappho, and then I used it as a audio. Um, and then Anne Heggie, the composer, composed lyrics, and we had we had a small street opera, and this was part of the opera. This is the video projection. Charles Woodman helped me with this part right here. He did some animation of a lot of animals that I had shot in captivity, like in zoos. Especially how weird the San Francisco Zoo is. But including domesticated animals, these all enter into this film that I have called Signs. And then I made a theatrical curtain with kind of same thing with the animals. Um, this is a painting. You can kind of see the relationship between, if I go backward, you see the curtain here and the painting here. This one is called The Spider's Door. And then this is a little shot of the street opera with Anne Heggie, and her name just went out of my mind, the singer. I'm working on a new project with her. You can hear just a second.
Troubles over the skin, I am the color of that grass. As I see the people in the bus coming to the eye, wonder they look at you. Is there me? Where do they go? Where do where do they go?
So I'll just keep going because that would take a while, but they sang the Sappho lyrics, and that song is going to be part of another project that she's redoing, the Orpheus, that I'm going to be doing the art direction for. I also use Dante. In this case, Charles Woodman made this animation in the middle, and you here see these curtains. This is the dark Sunday in the San Francisco Bay Area when we had 2 days of no sun from the fires. And so I took a picture of a house in my neighborhood, and I printed it on a fabric and made a theater, a kind of theater that's falling apart. And you can see the angel and the fallen angel. This is the dark sun. The images are all abstract in the animation. I don't think I have the video in here. Anyway, it has the Dante, and the Dante, I took all the Christianity out of Dante. And if you take out all the Christianity, not only is it a relief for some of us, but it becomes an environmental statement. So you can see it kind of moving here a little bit.
The dead are in the dark. We left them behind. Did heaven change its place?
We lost souls are singing from terraces now. Look there. This man has not seen his term of days, yet in his crazy wickedness he drew so near it, he had short breathing space. So I was dispatched to show others hell.
I'll just keep going because I know I'm running over. Anyway, it's Canto 1, just one of the cantos. And then you can see this is the other part of the installation. I'm thinking about the migrants here on the left and trying to imagine if I was a migrant and what would I want to keep in my boat, and also the infrastructure of civil society, which are the directions of where we're supposed to go on road signs. And you'll see the tassel on the right, which is like a buoy. So I'll just keep going. in 2016, I started going back and forth to Cuba because I was making 90 miles with Miami actors, Key West actors, and Havana telenovela actors. And I went to Cuba, which is something I wanted to do my whole life and never did. And it was like, okay, now it seems like I could go. So I went and I decided to shoot. I know this is a little bit of a lunatic thing to do, but to shoot for 2 films at once. Here I am with my crew, and we shot 90 Miles from Paradise, which is an entirely staged project that has a battle between the American actors and the Cuban actors. And we are also thinking about the fishery, and they share the same ocean. They're 90 miles from each other. As I'm shooting, I also am part of the LGBT community, and I went to the Jornada, which is a conference, and I started to see the kind of life of LGBT people in Cuba. And that became the beginning of something I went back 6 times to the country for. But you can see here, we're shooting in Miami and Key West at an abandoned home. A lot of the demolition companies will allow you to work with the homes that are going to be torn down. You just have to get a liability waiver. And that's what we did. We used it as a set. These demolition companies moved all of their own home ownership way away from the beaches, but still Florida is under a kind of authoritarian, kind of crazy government where you're not supposed to even talk about climate change. They're going to erase it out of all the textbooks of the school. And they've also thrown a lot of the books out of the libraries. Here we are on a barge, setting up our shot. And here's a dance company in Cuba. So you'll see these things are just going back and forth. This is Raesas dance company. And you can see that this is a man who is dressed as a woman. I always like the queer aesthetic kind of integrated into the project without having to actually make it about that. And then this is Charlie. Charlie transitions from a boy to a girl during the time I was filming. So Charlie is also a singer. So I was filming Charlie, and I worked with a Dominican procession band. I feel like my whole life I waited to work with music and musicians, and now I'm just like enthralled. This is just a little shot of, I'll just introduce this, and this is in Britain. This is in Ipswich, England. And we're again using sports because the people are really interested in cricket. And so we're playing a cricket match on the Nacton shore as the tide is coming in.
The misty over to our home in Ipswich town. As we sail up the misty over to our home in Ipswich town. As we sail up the misty over, we know we're homeward bound. And when we know we're homeward bound, we sing and sing out loud. As we sail up the misty over to our home in Ipswich town.
So that's just an excerpt.
As we sail up the misty
That those singers are sea shanty singers from the dock in Ipswich, called the Seasick Seagulls. I loved them, and they let me record them and play their original songs. Let me keep going. Whoops, sorry. Wait, I have to go back. Sorry. this is just an image to show you how sports can be adapted to a watery world. I'm studying a lot of those kind of images. So I want to say that in 2019, I was commissioned with my collective called Pacifica Future to create a town dialogue in the town of Pacifica, California, because Pacifica it's actually the most eroding town on the west coast of the United States. And we've already witnessed like apartment buildings coming down and homes and things. And still people, and it's kind of a middle class, working class community. It's not a huge resort. It wants to be a resort, but it's really hard to build hotels when the water is coming over the highway all the time. So what we wanted to do was stage a 500 person sea level rise pancake breakfast with student reporters reporting in to try to have a dialogue. But then in 2020, COVID happened and we weren't able to do that. So instead, and we made a book here, and I'll show you this a little bit. Here's the pages that fold out. We decided to do a kind of conceptual idea, both publicly engaging the people with knitting plastic bags. At the time of COVID, we were all getting everything delivered and wiping down our groceries, and you know, getting so many plastic things. We decided to take the plastic they were getting and recycle them and weave them and knit them. And here's Alicia Escott and I are doing a little performance in the ocean. And here we are knitting the plastic bags. We also worked with the Bureau of Linguistic Reality to kind of make new terms with the community in Pacifica. So we would do these kind of small circles of activity where people didn't feel like they were going to get COVID, but continue the project. And this is Modesto Covarrubias on the right and Alicia Escott on the left. And here's one of your fearless leaders, Manoush, on one of our walks. This walk was really to kind of understand the undulating cliffs and what happened in this area. So the woman whose house was fallen off the cliff was there to tell that story, among other things. And here are some of the bags that we displayed on the fence. And here's just a little bit of a mitigation where you can see the apartment buildings that eventually were taken down. This is still Pacifica and in kind of a, the full moon, high tide, king tide. We made a lot of banners based on the words that we conjugated with the town folk. And we brought those on the walk. So this is called Surfing a Poi, which means surfing on fire in Tagalog. And one of the participants was a surfer who was so freaked out about the dark Sunday, he decided to surf the whole day in the dark. And so we got him to make a word, and he made Surfing a Poi, surfing on fire. And then I think I'll just end you with a little bit. I am now in production for a project called Water City Kalimantan, or Water Cities Indonesia, now that we're actually including a lot of islands, because Jakarta has to move to Borneo, to East Kalimantan. And Jakarta is the first mega city that will have to have significant population relocation due to sea level rise and lack of drinking water and subsidence. The outsides of Java, I can sort of point it out here with my cursor. All these sort of outside areas are these kampoons where a lot of poor people live, and they actually live in standing water. They have a lot of difficulty, and they have small little boats and things to get things. But Java can't support the population that it has, and with this drinking water going away, as do all of the islands eventually. But right now they want to move it to Borneo. So, and Borneo has three, as you can see, here's Indonesia, Malaysia, and Brunei. Three countries share Borneo. The other thing about Borneo is that it has more biodiversity than any place in the planet, meaning all the insects, birds, mammals, things. We went to a orangutan foundation recently and filmed there. I'm working with 6 schools, 4 from East Kalimantan, which are working class kids, and 2 from Java. And we flew them to this area here, and we stayed at a lodge, and we watched the animals for a couple days, and then we made a dance that's like the orangutan dance with Eko Supriyanto, who's an Indonesian choreographer. So I'm in production, meaning I'm going to go again in January, and I'm going to film the areas where they're making man-made islands. And then I'm also in May going back to kind of do another film production of both the impact of the tourist industry in Bali, which is intense, and also work with a working class school that is training kids to become tourist workers in the industry there. And we're going to restage. They have a wood carving out in front of their school, and we're going to restage what is depicted in that carving. And then we're going to go to a ginger farm and an elephant sanctuary in Sumatra, and also to sort of investigate the shipping industry in Sulawesi. So I think I'll end there. I have millions more things to show you, but I don't want to take up too much of the time. And I would love to have discussion and questions for anyone who would like to bring something up. So I guess, well, how are we going to do this, Minush? Are we going to post in the chat questions?
Yes, it's Mary answering. Yes, you will, anybody who'd like to ask a question, please post it. But Kim, you're welcome just to call on people if they raise their hands on the screen. But we'll start with the chat questions.
Okay.
So huge appreciations and thanks to Kim and all who've joined. So let's give her a virtual round of applause.
Thanks.
Inspiring and provoking call for action. And this presentation will be archived on the WEED website. So please stay. We're going to stop this recording, and then we'll start a second recording